to the next set of questions. Dr. Thomas, what has been the most transformative lessons you've learned from clients?
That's a good question, Milton. I would say the most transformative lessons I've learned from my clients, number one, commitment. I've had, just over these years, right, almost 20 years, I've just had the honor and the privilege of seeing what commitment looks like from a mental wellness standpoint. And so, and I'm not saying it was like, just this perfect picture, but I saw the journey, right? I embraced the journey. And so the lessons that my clients teach me is about showing up, right? Being themselves, the importance of being authentic and honest, even to where the spending time figuring out like what that is. And so I've just really embraced the lessons that I've learned just being in this profession and serving people in various capacities. So whether that was with, a group setting, to an individual setting, to a workshop setting, to, a one-time event, it really just showed me like the work that we have to put in to stay mentally well. And so I'm always learning those lessons about resiliency, commitment, even, flexibility, right? Because not all the time, it doesn't feel good all the time when you're going through therapy and you're sharing and you're trying to get answers and you have to feel, right, also what you're sharing. And so I appreciate that my clients giving me that scene, that picture, and also helping them navigate it as well.
Alrighty then. Now, through your years of working in this field of work, how has being a therapist changed the way you view yourself or humanity?
Oh, that's a pretty deep question, and I'll start by answering, the view of myself. It changed how I see myself in a way that internally, I'm always trying to grow and get stronger, right? I just, as a person, being that ear to narratives, to trauma, to recovery of trauma, to addictions, career changes, it changed how I see myself evolving. Right? It gave it some substance. It gave me this depth, right? Like there's a soul that I have to reach down and take care of. And in this industry, you get to hear like the depths of that. I think we have the honor and we have the privilege of hearing the backstories of people that not all people get to hear and to see, because we see emotion. That has certainly changed like how I see myself evolving and actually what I deserve, right? I think it also gave me this visualization of like, I too deserve, right, to sit in the seat, to dive deep into my soul and see like what's there, what's happening. Am I well? So it let me know that me too, I have to focus on me as well. Being an agent of change and also being a human. And as far as like how I see humanity, it kind of goes a couple of ways. For me, I see humanity, it's changed how I see grace, how other people giving grace. It's certainly given me this glimpse of how I see things that go on in our country, our world, and how that changes people's beliefs, sometimes their value systems, sometimes it changes how they behave towards others. So while it didn't change like how I see humanity in like a bad light, it gives me more insight into all the angles of humanity. I think that's a good way to put it, right? Like over time, I've just seen various ways of humanity, how it can be displayed, how it can change, how it can adapt, how it can conform, but how it can bounce back, how, it can show resiliency. I've just seen humanity in so many different ways.
All right. Now, what eternal growth has this profession demanded of?
Patience connected with self-care. And what I mean by that is, for me internally, like, so for me, I'm like a sponge, right? People pour stuff into me because they are expecting me to walk alongside of them in some capacity. And so internally, I had to figure out, like, what patience do I have to have with myself, okay, to respond to the demand. And so that came with understanding the concept of caring for myself in my soul and my mind and my body. Right. And so for me internally, while I've grown so much, I've also had to be open to that evolving. Like, what does that mean? Especially as I dive into certain arenas of the mental health field, like, it requires a pull on you. There's a pull, there's a tug, there's this, constantly, there's a need for always charging up. And I had to understand that I needed patience with myself to understand, like, where that would take me, and being open to going there.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Now, what daily doings or habits sustain your emotional and spiritual well-being?
So I have some practices that sustains me emotionally and spiritually. I am heavily connected spiritually to my church ministry. I embrace not just working in ministry, but also sitting in the midst of being ministered to. I'm also an advocate for wellness plans. So whether that's a retreat, that's a conference, I like being around like-minded people that's there for a purpose of being restored, renewed, refining the purpose, like it's almost like getting a new energy pack, right? Getting a new battery package. So for me, I've always wanted to make sure that I have those habits and those practices, those traditions, if you will, professionally, that sustains, right, good emotional and spiritual well-being. I'm always talking about capacity. So I understand that doing this work, it requires emotional, mental, and physical capacity. And so I have to always take that inventory. I always have to evaluate that. Like, do I have the capacity to keep doing what I'm doing? And that has to come regularly, right? That I'm assessing that. So my systems, my tools have to be in place.
Okay. So how do you recognize and respond to compassion fatigue?
My body lets me know. When I think about compassion fatigue, that can the signs of that comes in various ways. So that can be mentally, physically, even spiritually, emotionally. So I'm in tune with, when I need a checkup when it comes to compassion fatigue. And ultimately, that's a place where I try to avoid sitting in, right? So I know that, I work with a lot of trauma circumstances. And so for me, I have to be aware of when I'm not releasing out as much as I'm getting poured into. So there's almost like a system that I have to be aware of. Is how long have I been on 10, as I call it, from a professional standpoint? How long have I been on 10 with serving without taking an assessment of where my, especially compassion fatigue is, how emotionally and mentally connected and pouring out have I been doing to not have checked in with myself to see, am I okay? How is that? How's my physical health? Where are my thoughts at? Am I getting enough sleep? And my body tells me that because, stuff starts to kind of come back to me. And so I have my telltale signs. I'm definitely not going to give that all out now, but my thoughts tell me, my body tells me, even the way I prepare for my day. So when I wake up, I have these cues that my body gives me to say, okay, it's time to take a step back because there's some emotional, right, overload here. There's some oozing out that's here and you need to address it. So I'm always making sure I'm attentive to that.
Okay, that's well said. Now, we're on the last question of the segment, so let's hit it hard. Dr. Thomas, what boundaries have been hardest and also most necessary to maintain?
I would say the boundary, right? that's been most challenging or difficult, and this is more so internally, is discerning like how I show up in my community that's saturated with chronic trauma. And so the boundary has to be there because this is how burnout occurs, right? Trying to take on too much at one time. So I have to really create systems and boundaries for myself when I'm being asked to show up in certain ways, whether that's to facilitate, to speak, to run a workshop, to, launch a group for X amount of time. I have to really create boundaries for me to say, you can't take all of this on this level at one time. You have to spread it out. You're not Superwoman, right? And so that's something that I learned early on, because you come into the field thinking like, I'm just going to serve everybody at one time. Whatever comes, how it comes, I'm ready. And it didn't happen like that, right? So my body told me early on, like, okay, you have to manage your emotional being well to serve in this capacity, in the way that God has called you. So that boundary is making sure that I don't pile up on how I serve, right, under certain conditions.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful answer, Dr. Thomas.